I screamed in fright when I saw Kitty, and she immediately covered her naked body with a blanket. Adam, who was also in the room, turned around with wide open eyes and his hands hurriedly gathered clothes scattered all over the bedroom. But wait, there's more to the story. Just as he was about to speak up, a vase came flying dangerously close to his head, stopping him in his tracks. Next thing I knew, this guy in nothing but his underwear bolted out of the window and dashed to his car. In the heat of the moment, I grabbed a wooden bat and hurled it after him, hitting and breaking his car's headlight. Then, within a blink, his car sped away, vanishing into the maze of streets nearby. Can you believe all of this unfolded in just a minute? Yep, you got that right. I just caught my wife cheating in our house, in our bedroom, in our bed. And I had just come home to change clothes because I got very dirty at work. My new colleague, a young and cute girl, was extremely clumsy. She was carrying several cups of coffee in her hands and tripped over her foot, causing the hot drinks to spill on me and smear my shirt and pants. My boss, who's usually pretty understanding, noticed I was upset and suggested I go home to change my clothes. Meanwhile, Kitty was crying and giving reasons for what happened. I walked to the closet and started changing my clothes slowly and deliberately. I didn't respond to anything Kitty said because I felt like if I opened my mouth, all the anger I was holding back would burst out. I was afraid I might end up doing something wrong or even violent if I let myself get too upset. It took all the willpower to maintain outward calmness. The maximum I could do was tell her to pack up and leave before I returned from work. I left the house, got into the car and drove to work. Apparently, my condition showed that something had happened because my colleagues began asking about my health. They said I looked like I had just returned from a war. Well, it wasn't far from the truth. There really was a real war going on inside me until the end of the workday. I just sat in front of the computer monitor, not reacting to what was happening around. All I wanted was to go to a bar and get drunk with my best friend. That's exactly what I did immediately after work. I gave my friend a call and asked if he could meet me at a nearby bar. I think my voice probably hinted that things weren't great because he agreed to come without prying for details. That night is a bit hazy in my memory. We ended up having a lot of whiskey and beer, chatting about my split from Kitty. My best friend made sure I got a taxi and even walked me right up to my front door before saying goodbye. Now this house did not look like a cozy and homely shelter. It became too quiet and empty. There were only my shoes in the hallway. The bedroom looked neat, as if nothing had happened there. The closets, chests of drawers, bathroom, even the kitchen were empty. Kitty really took absolutely all her stuff. Even her potted plants were gone somewhere. It felt like someone had just moved into this house and hadn't finished settling in yet. I couldn't stay calm in the bedroom. Now it's the most hated, disgusting room for me. So I was sleeping on the couch in the living room. In the morning my head was hurting terribly. It seemed it was about to split into pieces from the hellish pulsating pain. I struggled to open my eyes, the sunlight piercing through the undrawn curtains causing pain. I sat on the couch and the room began to spin, accompanied by the rising nausea in my throat. Managing to reach the bathroom, I threw up the remnants of yesterday's drinking. The hangover hit me like a truck, my head buzzing, mouth dry, and stomach cramped with great effort. I had to push myself hard to take a shower, brush my teeth, shave, and put on clothes. Every little action felt like a huge struggle. When I finally made it back to the living room, I just sank onto the couch. The idea of getting ready for work by myself felt like an impossible task. I felt so drained. I reached for my phone with heavy hands and dialed my boss to let her know I wouldn't be able to make it in today. However, my gaze fell on Kitty's photo on the nightstand and memories of yesterday hit me hard. Hatred and disappointment overwhelmed me with a renewed force. Suppressing those emotions, I knew the main thing now was to survive this hellish workday and see what happens next. Despite the severe hangover, I decided to go to work in the empty house filled with memories of Kitty. It felt like a nightmare. All my determination vanished in an instant. In your situation, it's very likely that Kitty will get custody and you'll pay alimony. Our objective now is to minimize your losses after the divorce, said the lawyer. On the one hand, now I knew my legal prospects and options regarding the divorce that was useful to understand further steps. The lawyer competently answered all my questions. On the other hand, some things burdened and scared me, especially the fact that Kitty could return home at any moment and I wouldn't be able to do anything about it, or that she could significantly complicate me getting custody of the children. I felt relieved that I now understood all the nuances of the divorce process, but simultaneously I was anxious and annoyed by my own helplessness. The future fate of the children was also a constant source of worry. This mixture of conflicting emotions kept me on edge, feeling slightly calmer one minute, and then agitated the next. I walked down the street, absorbed in my thoughts and concerns, facing difficult decisions on how to proceed in such an uncertain situation. Over the next few days I tried to keep it together and not lose my mind over the uncertainty. Kitty kept on calling, but I made a decision not to answer any of her calls. I had this feeling, almost like a half expectation, that she might just show up at the door with all her bags. Friday rolled around and I picked up the kids from my parents' place for our weekend together. On Saturday we had a blast. We went to our favorite pizza place and played some bowling. The kids were so happy and for a brief moment everything felt okay again. Just a dad with his kids, spending a carefree day. However, closer to the evening when the kids and I were watching a cartoon before bed, the doorbell suddenly rang unexpectedly. I froze, realizing it was Kitty. The kids happily screamed Mom and rushed to meet her. She stood at the door with a huge suitcase and several bags. The guilty smile on her face said it all. "Hi, can I come in? After all, this is still my house." To the perfect day collapsed in an instant when the children went to their rooms and fell asleep. Kitty tried to talk to me, but I nipped all her attempts in the bud. I absolutely didn't want to talk about anything. All I said coldly was, "I need to go to bed. I have work tomorrow." After that, I started preparing my sleeping place on the couch in the living room. In the morning, I woke up to the noise in the kitchen. Kitty was making breakfast for the whole family as if nothing had happened. When I entered the room, she smiled cordially. "Good morning. I made pancakes, your favorite. The kids already ate and went to get ready for school. Sit down. Let's eat breakfast together," she said, trying to make things feel normal and open a chance for us to talk. But I kept my distance. I didn't feel hungry at all. Silently, I poured myself some coffee, took a small sip, and left the cup in the sink. I muttered something about needing to head to work as I made my way towards the door. The whole family breakfast scene with Kitty just made me feel sick and repelled. I wasn't ready to talk to her right now. Maybe sometime later that evening, when I returned from work, my wife approached me again. Her eyes were red from crying. "Listen, I know you don't want to talk to me right now, but sooner or later we'll have to do it," she sobbed before continuing. She said, "I didn't mean to betray you. It's just that night we had a little too much to drink with colleagues after work, and Adam gave me a ride home. And somehow it just happened. I swear it was only once. I regret it. Let's try to preserve the family for the sake of the children." However, her excuses only made me angrier. Impaired judgment indeed. More like she just decided to misbehave at my expense. "I don't know what happened with you and how many times," I replied coldly, "but either way I'm filing for divorce. Our relationship is over now. Excuse me, I really need to rest after a working day." I turned to go to the bathroom and take a shower. I had no desire to listen to her pathetic excuses. The days before the divorce hearing were pure hell for me. I went to work like a zombie operating on autopilot. My boss even offered me paid leave so I could deal with family issues. But I refused, because sitting at home would be even worse than just numbly functioning at work. That's where I least wanted to be. The only reason I came home was because of the kids. It was worth enduring for their sake. Kitty seemed to be making an effort to mend things before the divorce. She cooked my favorite meals, made sure the house was perfect, spoke to me in a gentle manner, and tried not to bother me unnecessarily. There were even a few times when she attempted to get closer physically. But her attempts at reconciliation just made me angrier. I didn't want any of it. I just wanted this divorce nightmare to be over and done with as quickly as possible. Of course, the kids noticed that lately their parents were acting strange. I was gloomy and pensive, constantly distracted from all conversations. Kitty was also not at all like herself, quiet and sad. The children were worried. They didn't understand what was going on with Mom and Dad. One day my son asked me, "Dad, has something happened between you and Mom? You argue all the time. My sister and I are concerned." I decided to have an honest talk with the kids and explain the situation in terms they could understand. I gently informed our children that their mom and I no longer love each other as we used to, and soon we will stop being husband and wife, meaning we'll get a divorce. They were upset by this news, but I assured them that we will both continue to love them and spend time with them, just living separately. I promised them they could always count on my support and care no matter what. This reassured the kids a little. Barbara kept desperately trying to regain my affection, apologizing and begging me to give her a chance to earn back my trust. I only felt irritated. It seemed Kitty didn't want to accept reality. Our relationship was over. I decided to take an indirect approach to make her understand. "All right," I said, "if you really regret it and want to regain my trust, you'll have to do something. First, take a lie detector test to answer all my questions honestly. Second, get tested for sexually transmitted infections to rule out any contagion. If the results come back negative, I may be able to forgive you." I understood these conditions would sound humiliating to her. I wasn't actually interested in the lie detector or test results, but I needed Kitty to realize the gravity of the situation and the consequences of her actions and to see just how much she had destroyed my trust in her with her betrayal. I figured maybe this would make her understand it's over and she'd let go of our broken relationship. Surprisingly, my wife agreed to these terms. She kept postponing the lie detector test, seeming worried about uncomfortable questions. But she quickly went for testing for infections, feeling absolutely certain she'd get a negative result. However, a few days later, there was an unexpected and unpleasant revelation. Kitty's test showed she was positive for HIV. I was shocked by the news. In a panic, I immediately got tested, too. Those were the most stressful days of my life as I awaited results. Thankfully, my indicators came back clean despite my wife's infidelity. I had avoided infection, but now had the opportunity for a special revenge. I just had to take advantage of it. I knew Adam was Kitty's colleague and worked with her in the same office. I understood what a commotion it would cause if it turned out colleagues were having intimate relations and transmitting a dangerous infection to each other. Moreover, there was a risk Kitty and Adam had slept not only with each other, but with other subordinates too. Getting them fired and subsequently disgraced would be the perfect revenge. After receiving Kitty's test results, I scheduled a meeting with the head of the company where my wife worked. Explaining beforehand to his secretary the urgency of the matter, at the meeting I relayed the situation. Kitty had cheated on me with her colleague Adam, possibly right in the office, violating corporate ethics. As a result, she had contracted HIV. I demanded they immediately fire her and Adam since their irresponsible behavior could jeopardize the health of all other employees. I reminded the manager that by law, the employer bears responsibility for the health and safety of employees. I described the scale of damage if these two had infected others. In this case, the employer had legal grounds to terminate my wife and her lover to ensure the safety of remaining staff and visitors. The gravity of it quickly dawned on the manager. He assured me he'd look into this matter and take the appropriate steps according to the rules and laws in place. With news like this, he'd have no option but to let go of Kitty and Adam from their jobs and require all employees to go through mandatory HIV testing. Once Kitty learned about being fired, she exploded in anger, directing it towards me. "You're the one who lied to them, aren't you? Accusing me of things that never even occurred. In reality, you were the one cheating on me all these years and you infected me with HIV. But now you're framing me as the guilty one," she yelled. I just bitterly smirked at these delusional accusations. Of course, it was just a desperate attempt at manipulation on her part. After all, according to my tests, I'm completely healthy and could not have transmitted HIV to her in any way. However, the mandatory HIV testing conducted at Kitty's company revealed a grim picture. It turned out that in addition to my wife and Adam, several other employees had also tested positive. It looked like there really were some promiscuous with sexual relations between colleagues there. And Kitty was far from the only victim of that debauched atmosphere. Thanks to this situation, I now had a real chance of getting custody of our children. As my lawyer explained, I now had evidence to show that I was a healthy and responsible parent, unlike Kitty, who tested positive for HIV and didn't have a clean record. Her behaviors at work suggested a moral and chaotic lifestyle. And with her current unemployment, she might not be able to fully support and care for the kids. It was concerning that she might not provide the best influence for them, especially considering her health condition. I was financially stable and could give the children everything they needed. Thus, if my lawyer and I substantiated all these points in court, I would have every reason to get full custody of the children. After the divorce from Kitty, divorce is like entering a new reality where you look at your life with a clean slate. Fortunately, after all that legal tangle, I became a real single parent with 2 kids on my hands. Finally, the nightmare was over and I could breathe freely again. I had to sell our house to divide assets with my ex-wife. I temporarily moved in with my parents, with the kids, while I saved up enough money to buy my own house or decide to take out a loan. My parents' support was invaluable, especially when I went to work. Someone had to look after the children in my absence. Work probably became my island of safety and stability in this sea of change. My boss knew about the difficult family situation, so she sometimes cut me some slack, allowing me to leave work early. For example, I turned down vacation time because I wanted to find a new home or apartment as soon as possible and get settled so my kids could live comfortably. Gradually, everything was falling into place and calm was returning to my life, but not to my ex-wife's life, finding herself in dire straits. Kitty sued Adam for deliberate HIV infection. Fear and anxiety stared reality in the face. That's what she was experiencing now. Her life became like a picture torn to pieces. Every trial was like a blow to her emotional state under stress and uncertainty about the future. Kitty lost weight and her eyes reflected fatigue and melancholy. I used to be used to seeing joy on her face, but now it was the shadow of a past life, the lack of peace and the storm of emotions that took their toll on her appearance. The sparkle in her eyes faded, her skin lost its freshness. When she came to visit the children, it was clear she wasn't paying proper attention to herself. Her appearance spoke volumes, her hair lacked its usual luster, and her clothes didn't seem to fit as they once did. It was as if she'd forgotten the importance of taking care of herself. My parents noticed these changes and grew worried about her well-being. However, she appeared withdrawn, lost in her own world, consumed by legal issues and her personal battles. It was clear that time hadn't been kind to her, and the weight of stress and difficulties had left a visible mark on her, reflecting the tough days she was enduring. Kitty did try to see the kids, but most times these were brief visits. I felt she lacked the strength and resources for regular interaction. The promises she made about caring for the children now seemed like empty assurances. I grasped the fact that she couldn't provide the level of care they needed. The lawsuits and her fight for her rights had consumed her to the point where she couldn't be fully present in the children's lives. During this time, my parents became a reliable pillar of support for the grandchildren, filling the void left by maternal care. As I worked on building our new life, my ex-wife became entangled in a maze of lawsuits and her own difficulties. The divorce not only exposed our personal disagreements, but also highlighted Kitty's incapacity to fulfill the role of a caring mother. Life after divorce involves taking many small steps. Initially, you navigate through a storm of emotions, gradually moving towards realism. A new apartment, new routines, new responsibilities. These become part of the journey. Somewhere along the way you begin to realize that you're okay, that you can handle it, and most importantly, that you're not alone in this swim. Family and children become your foothold, enable you to move forward, taking little steps in your new life and rebuilding it anew.